Actually, I'm generation 6 to be here. There were 2 generations of Faddens who were farmers or settlers and so forth in the valley, and it wasn't until the 3rd generation, which would be my great-grandfather, who opened this store in 1896. This is a gas-powered tapping machine. Now, prior to this, all the tapping was done with a hand drill. Some are up above. The one hanging there with the handle on it is a gear-driven drill. But prior to these tapping machines, most all maple tap holes were drilled with a bit brace. When this thing came along, boy, it was like going from a horseless carriage to an automobile. However, this thing weighs about 45, 50 pounds, so you carry it on your back for 8, 10 hours a day. It gets pretty heavy. About 3,000 to 3,500 gallons of maple syrup, and we don't wholesale any of the syrup. It's all retailed right here out of the store, and it's shipped all over the world. They have. Well, when they purchase maple syrup here, it's sort of like going to a vineyard or a winery. You know, people, they've read someplace that the dark stuff might be the best. However, they want to know what we think. And then they want to know about the process. Probably the first part of my life, I did anything I could do not to have to work in the store. But then when you get a little bit older, you realize that you know, it becomes your turn, and you know, I'd go right straight to hell if I didn't keep the store open when it was my doing. And I'm in hopes that, you know, my children, actually, I'm doing it for my ancestors, and moreover, I'm doing it because I'm in hopes that my children and my grandchildren will carry on from when I leave off. Yeah, and it is disappointing.
It's just too funny.
But it's the truth. You have to be an entrepreneur to know what I'm saying when they leave and they didn't buy anything. You go, holy smoke, what did I do wrong? Many gallons of syrup that we produce, well, right now about 3,000 to 3,500 gallons a year. The favorite part of the tours, I guess, you know, every tour is different. I don't have a script that I work off. I sort of play to the crowd as the people are coming, and they ask all kinds of crazy questions, and that's kind of what makes the tour fun. And as for running the store, you know, I'm going to show you some journals and stuff to prove that on a given day I have people here from any place on the planet, actually from all over the world. They come, and you know, my mission continues the same. If they came here from the Philippines or Czechoslovakia, I want them to leave with something in their pockets. The most popular item in the store, of course, is the maple syrup, bar none. And also with the maple syrup, one reason I think it's popular, or why people come here to buy it, is because they have a list of questions. When they go to Trader Joe's or someplace like that, it's available on the shelf, but it's just another one of the myriad of products that they have. When they purchase maple syrup here, it's sort of like going to a vineyard or a winery. You know, people, they've read someplace that the dark stuff might be the best. However, they want to know what we think, and then they want to know about the process. And through that, I think it adds value to the product. And actually, when they taste it, they realize that it's not the same thing that they're buying at a discount store. And as a result, they become a customer. Now, when I was first start doing this, I inherited customers from my grandfather, of course. My family's been doing this a long time. But as time has gone by, those people have passed on. And hopefully, I'm able to hook their children or their grandchildren on the virtues of good Fadden's maple syrup. And that's my mission. When you ask about how do I determine what products to sell, I'm always aware of the change in times. When I was a boy, people used to come into the store and they would present you with a list. And then you would go somewheres in the building to get a length of rope, a gallon of kerosene, maybe a bag of rabbit pellets. And you would bring it to the register, and they would finish the transaction, and out the door they'd go, happy camper. Well, today, if I had those same products for sale, they wouldn't sell because people are programmed, for example, to buy rabbit pellets. They're going to go to Tractor Supply, and if they want hinges, nuts, bolts, washers, and screws, they think they need to go to Home Depot. So I recognize that, and then also recognize that what sells good for me, primarily, of course, is the maple syrup, but also I've discovered that I could sell maple scented candles or Johnson Woolen Mill products. My great-grandfather sold Johnson Woolen Mill products, and even now, 100 and something years later, the same product still sells well in my store. Wow. This nice stained glass window came from a Catholic church, which is at Southern New Hampshire University. My daughter-in-law's uncle was the project manager, and when they were tearing down the Catholic church, he discovered that the stained glass had the name Fadden on it. Was wondering if I was interested in it, and of course I am. And for Christmas, my favorite daughter-in-law presented me with a nice Michael Fadden, in memory of Michael Fadden, stained glass window. So that's where that came from. This railroad schedule was an original document from the North Woodstock Railroad Station. That building was located right over where the Cafe Lafayette is now. And in 1910, you can see that the train arrived here in Woodstock 3 times a day, which is pretty neat way back then. The little AMC hiking sign above it, I acquired from a fellow down in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I know from being there that that sign was originally at the Lonesome Lake Trail, and I also can tell you that the Profile House burnt in 1924, so that sign is an old one. The poster here beside of the railroad station poster is an original Pemigewasset Valley stage line advertisement. The stage used to leave, as you can see, a couple of times a day from the depot, and would run from the depot to the flume and to the Profile House. There's a photograph above it. That photograph was taken with the stage, and by the looks of it, I'd say it was taken at the Profile House site, which is today's Cannon Mountain ski area. My grandfather used to look at a stage like that, and when it had 6 horses, he'd say that the stage was headed for the Notch. When it had 4 horses, they were servicing the hotels. This is pretty neat, I thought. The one picture below it was a feature that was in the Manchester Union Leader. We were interviewed a number of years ago for a reality TV program that they were going to do on producing maple syrup. Obviously, it wasn't as hot as American Choppers because we didn't make it. This cider press is constructed by the Ames Tool Company, which happens to be one of the oldest manufacturers of tools in America. It's a pretty simple design, but it's just neat in its construction. I acquired this from the Jack-O-Lantern Resort when they were tearing the place down, and prior to being at the Jack-O-Lantern Resort, this belonged to the Averys, which owned the land where the Jack-O-Lantern Resort was built on prior to being Jack-O-Lantern. During 2012, we were lucky enough to host the annual tree tapping ceremony for the New Hampshire Maple Producers Association. And along with that hosting, we had Governor Lynch up, and he drilled a tree on our common down by the bandstand. He and his wife had a little bit of a competition where she drilled one hole and he drilled the other hole, and the competition was to see which one would get the sap flowing out of the spout first. And I hate to admit it, but Mrs. Lynch, her tree ran first. And it was a grandiose event too. We had the school band who played tunes while we were there, and also trucked out busloads of the school kids to come down and enjoy the tree tapping ceremony. And then afterwards, Governor Lynch milled around with them all, and we came back to the shop and had sugar on snow, ice cream. Geez, it was a great event. Below that is another Manchester Union Leader article, whereas the folks at the Woodstock Inn Brewery decided to produce a new beer, and the beer that they chose was the maple porter, and we provided the maple syrup that went into the maple porter. And as a result of making great beer, both Scott Rice and I made it into the newspaper. This was a wall is covered with newspaper and magazines that over the years we've been lucky to be in. This was Country Folks magazine, which is a publication out of Pennsylvania. Then there was the New Hampshire To-Do magazine, and of course a number of times we've been on the front page of the Manchester paper. This particular article that's taken out is because we made syrup on Valentine's Day, which was unusual, and the climate had changed a little bit that year, and as a result, early maple syrup made good for news. This one was in the Concord Monitor. I think the article showed up either on our 5th, 6th, or 7th Maple Syrup Award. And my son James, you can see him hanging around in the doorway there, looking at the photographer. The one above it was a feature that was in the Maple section of the New Hampshire paper when we won our 5th Maple Award. Oh, this is a hot one. This is a hand-done painting, hand-painted by Nola Clark Grant. My family and the Clark family were pretty darn close. I never had any sisters, so Nola sort of is the sister that I never had. And when I say sister, she says and does things to me that only a sister would do to you. This painting that she did, she took the portable sugar house and then she painted a scene around it. Said she had artistic license while that she was doing it. We were also featured in the Manchester Airport News and again in the Lakes region. And I got a letter from Congressman Bass, who provided maple syrup that year to the President of the United States. No matter what one thinks about the politics of the situation, it's still a pretty good honor to have your product on the table of the President of the United States. Mr. Trump should get some, maybe it'll sweeten him up some. Also, I've been very fortunate to spend time with the governors of the state of New Hampshire. The first one that I really enjoyed was Governor and Mrs. Lynch. And they ski regularly at Cannon Mountain. And he stops in every once in a while to still check on us. Then there was Governor Hassan. And then most recently I was with Chris Sununu at another governor's tree tapping ceremony. Above that is an old railroad map. This one I think is 1904, and you can see that New Hampshire is just riddled with railroads. It was a great idea. We should be doing it today. This is a collection of shoes, or sharp shoes they're really called, for oxen. Danny Keniston, who I'm pretty sure we all know here locally, his mother, Marjorie Plaisted, her father invented sharp shoes for oxen, and as a result, Marge Plaisted used to have the pattern on sharp shoes for oxen. Now, I don't think it's a hot product today, but at the time it was a pretty good invention. And these are old handmade chains. When I say handmade, the links were constructed by a blacksmith, and all the hooks and so forth on the ends were all handmade. Same with these pulp hooks. These were all made by hand by a blacksmith, nothing produced on a machine. The Hate to Quit It farm, that used to be down to Woodstock. When Interstate 93 came through, it took the house. Actually, Mr. Corkum, who was a teacher of mine in school, he was the owner of that house at the time, and he had the house moved further down Route 175, past the KOA campground. But the Hate to Quit It farm was located directly across the street from where Joan Hart lives today. Before that, it was Donnie Amos's mother's house. And then on one of our trips to Concord to receive the Maple Syrup Awards, we were lucky enough to be with Governor Lynch. And geez, when I was down there, I took my sons, both my sons with me, and Representative Edmond Jeanette was also there. They rolled out the red carpet for us, so when I got home, I hand wrote a thank you note to the governor, and a couple days later from him, I received a thank you for my thank you. And then this one was a publication of the White Mountains magazine. A couple of years ago, we were really lucky to be featured in that magazine. This is a gas-powered tapping machine. Now, prior to this, all the tapping was done with a hand drill. Some are up above. The one hanging there with the handle on it is a gear-driven drill. But prior to these tapping machines, most all maple tap holes were drilled with a bit brace. When this thing came along, boy, it was like going from a horseless carriage to an automobile. However, this thing weighs about 45, 50 pounds, so you carry it on your back for 8-10 hours a day. It gets pretty heavy. The picture above it shows Clyde Cassidy and Glenn Hart operating this tapping machine in 1956. These sap yokes, as they're called, the lowest one, the dark brown one, is a hand-carved one, and those are made probably for one particular person, because nobody has a set of shoulders. No two people have a set of shoulders the same. And for one person to wear it, it could be comfortable, but when another person to put it on, it's tortured to carry it all day. So the red one that you see in the middle has cross straps across bows, and those straps could be adjusted to fit anyone's shoulders, made a much better fit. And those were used from the hooks on each side of the yoke would hang sap pails, fill the sap pails up with sap and carry them back to a tank to be hauled into the sugar house. And beside of that's a neat old birdhouse. Has nothing to do with maple sugaring, however, it's just cool looking. The sled beside of it is called a Travis, And when I was a kid, we used to take these things up on a hill someplace, and a whole bunch of us would sit on the seat and slide down the hill. The sliding part was the fun part. Dragging the sled back up to the top of the hill is what took the fun out of it. You can see it had steel runners too, and the front part of the sled steers. But just a simple board. Then posters and pictures. We're lucky here in New Hampshire to have a lot of political attention, and as a result, we've had an awful lot of politicians that have come through. And I guess this one would be Governor or Senator Scott Brown at the time. He was running to be a senator here in New Hampshire. And also we put some of the Woodstockian beer to him, so he was happy when he left. And then Senator Ayotte. I've been friends with Senator Ayotte for a long time. Her mother used to rent a house down Lower Woodstock, and her family would ski here during the winter. So I've met Senator Ayotte when she was probably still in high school. And then, of course, she became Attorney General for the state of New Hampshire. Met her again, involved in events and so forth. And when she decided that she was going to run for Senate, she came around to see me if I could give my support to her, and of course I did. And we had a 6-year friendship of her being in the United States Senate. Smart lady. And then of course I want to make sure that I balance the scales. Equally, I've had as many visits with Senator Shaheen. My first encounters with Senator Shaheen was when she was governor, and she really enjoys the White Mountains of New Hampshire, so we've had her around quite a bit. The photograph that we're there, that we're in together here, was taken over to the Episcopal Church, and of course it was midweek when she was here, but we still went in and rang the bell. And probably for myself, one of the proudest moments for my family is when we won our 7th Best Maple Syrup Award. And as a result of that accomplishment, we were invited to the New Hampshire State Senate, where they presented the bowl to us. And I was tickled to death to take my father and my son with me down when we got it. And actually, you can see from the pictures that I was able to address the Senate right from the podium. And along with this trip, we also were invited to stop in and see the Speaker of the House, Jasper, and along with him was our representative at the time, which was Edmond Jeanette, and Gene Chandler, who stopped in to visit us. And Gene Chandler comes over from Bartlett. I've known Gene Chandler. Actually, Gene Chandler used to be Speaker of the House. I've known him since I was a kid. And then, of course, we've got some documentation that we've received from the governor's office and from the Senate and the Congress on our accomplishments with maple production. Here's one here, too. When I squared up with the rest of my family and really acquired the general store on our own, I closed down for a little bit while I came inside and renovated, jacked the building up, fixed some things that need to be fixed. And when I got ready to open the doors back up again, my dear friend Murray Clark said that I should have a grand opening. And so we had a party, a grand opening party, and Murray came down and presented me with a 1913 silver certificate $1 bill. And that's that $1 bill. I'll tell you, by the time that it passed between our hands, him hanging on to it and me pulling on it, it stretched from a 1 to a 10. Murray used to say that I had deep pockets, but then he followed it up with short arms. Another one of Senator Ayotte underneath of that picture. And above that, these picture frames, it's antique picture frame, but these were common in houses back years ago, where you didn't get a lot of mail and you didn't have a lot of reading material, so what you did acquire was valuable. So these picture frames would tip out, and you'd take old correspondence and stuff and put it behind these pictures and keep it there so you could show it off to your friends when they came. Today we take for granted all the junk we get in the mail, but years ago, you know, you might only get one letter a year. Oh, the rest of the stuff that's in here. If we was to focus on the Mountainside Spring, that is a reproduction of the original sign that used to be located across the street from where Gavoni's restaurant is, or was. My grandfather could recite that poem verbatim. The spam sign is another creation of Nola Clark Grant. As I told her, she likes to be my sister. Originally, this building, it opened in 1896.
And how many generations has the Fadden family been in Woodstock?
Well, actually, I'm generation 6 to be here. There were 2 generations of Faddens who were farmers or settlers and so forth in the valley, and it wasn't until the 3rd generation, which would be my great-grandfather, who opened this store in 1896.
How long has the sugaring been in operation, especially commercially?
Yeah, the sugaring's always been in the family, but in a real commercial endeavor was in the late 1930s, early 1940s. My grandfather Norman really got down to producing maple products for sale in the store, actually.
When did you first start sugaring?
Well, I used to wait at the door for my father to leave to go in the woods when I was a kid. I can't ever remember a time not sugaring. My son James is equally as enthused about it. He used to do the same thing too, boy, Saturday mornings or nights after school. He was always ready to go for sugaring.
What made you want to work in the store, keep this store going?
Well, probably the first part of my life, I did anything I could do not to have to work in the store. But then when you get a little bit older, you realize that it becomes your turn. And I'd go right straight to hell if I didn't keep the store open when it was my doing. And I'm in hopes that my children, actually, I'm doing it for my ancestors. And moreover, I'm doing it because I'm in hopes that my children and my grandchildren will carry on from when I leave off.
So what does keep Fadden's store relevant as times change? Keeps it popular, keeps people coming here?
Well, of course, the main drive for keeping the store open is revenue to pay the bills. And you try to recognize and have products that people are going to buy and start to make the profits necessary to keep the doors open.
What feeling do you want a customer to take away with them when they come into your store?
Why, gee, you spend an awful lot of money to advertise and promote yourself in order to get people to come to the store. And then once they come in, you certainly want to fulfill the experience and hopefully going to get them to come back again. The main thing, of course, is to sell them something so that when I have an alarm that's on the front door, so when somebody gets to the door and if they didn't buy anything, the alarm goes off and I've got to go up and do something about that. Sell them a pack of gum, sell them a quart of maple syrup. That's what we're here for.
So back to that syrup. How many gallons of maple syrup are produced each year by Fadden's?
At this time, we annually produce about 3,000 to 3,500 gallons of maple syrup. And we don't wholesale any of the syrup. It's all retailed right here out of the store. And it's shipped all over the world.
Okay. What's the most popular item at the store?
Oh, most definitely the maple syrup. It's our niche. And it's the thing that I enjoy selling the most for the conversations that you have with people that are buying it.
How do you determine what products to sell, obviously, aside from the syrup?
Well, you've got to be always observant, pay attention to what people are buying, but I've found that products that are associated with maple syrup, for sure, candles, candy, popcorn, jellies, jams, pancake mixes, and so forth, are a hot item to go along with maple syrup. But also, we're still selling Johnson Woolen mill jackets and pants and clothing and stuff, which is something that my great-grandfather also sold.
What is your favorite part of the tours?
Well, no tour is exactly the same. I don't have a script that I do them from. So I guess my favorite thing would probably be the interaction that I have with the people. The general public has a great interest in maple syrup and maple syrup production. And the other part of it, I guess, is the people that I meet. Once again, I've got people from all over the world. The conversations that we have, I enjoy that the most, I think.
And are running the tours your favorite part of operating the store, or are there other aspects that you love just as well, if not more?
Oh, I definitely enjoy the interaction with the people. That's the most enjoyable thing, I think, about being in the store or even the maple tours, is the interaction with the general public. I really enjoy people. As a result, my mother was never able to sell my stuff. Here's a fire truck I had when I was a kid. And the moving van came to me from Brian Kilkellan, who came here and said that, geez, you've got all this stuff, you should have my truck as well to put with yours. So that was a gift from Brian Kilkellan. The steam shovel is something I had when I was a kid. The sign above it was on the front windows of the store. Here's a picture of a portrait painted of my grandfather. That was painted by Charlie Nicoll. He was down to he bought the Baptist church down here at the Common and had an art studio there for a while. I was able to acquire that from him when he closed up his art studio. And beside of that, there's a little girl holding a puppy. And it's in a frame. On the top of the frame it says NW for North Woodstock. You can't see it from this angle, but at the bottom it says NH for New Hampshire. And then in all four corners there are maple leaves. But if you flip the thing around, on the back side, in my grandfather's handwriting, it says, Dad made this for me. Makes a real keepsake out of it. The large telephone that's further up came from up in Dover, Foxcroft, Maine. However, the little telephone that's beside of it came from St. Augustine, Florida. When I acquired the phone, I was acquiring it under the assumption it come out of Flagler's Hotel. I put that in my suitcase, and by the time I got home, my suitcase had been gone through several times by airport security. The big clock beside of it is a self-winding clock, and by that I mean it has dry cell batteries in it. The significance of these clocks is that Western Union used to provide the clock for $100 a year, and along with that $100 became the servicing of the clock, and also every day at noontime a signal came out from the Naval Observatory in Washington, and the hands of the clock were synchronized to noontime. So every day at noon the clock was accurate. Sometimes in schools and factories they had satellite clocks that were hooked to these that would go out, but every day at noon when the signal came, the clock would be accurate. You know, that service existed all the way up until Jimmy Carter was president, and when Carter became president, we switched over to the atomic clock. The collection of tins and signs, the pure New Hampshire maple sign is a relic of the 1950s. They were put out by the New Hampshire Maple Producers Association to try to create a brand for New Hampshire maple producers. And all the tin cans and so forth that you see on the shelf are all a collection of tins that over the years have migrated or evolved, I should say, into the plastic containers that we use today. Once again, there's another sap yoke. This one's painted orange. It's got some steel straps on it because it had cracked and broken. Beside of that is an original 1944 Smokey the Bear poster. Smokey was born in 44. And the poster is attached to an original Forest Service bulletin board with a little roof and so forth on it. Beside that's the North Woodstock souvenir store, which originally opened where Peg's Restaurant is today by my great-grandmother. And then later on in life, my aunt, my grandfather's sister Edna, took over operation of the souvenir store. And there's a hornet's nest in the corner. That hornet's nest was under the eaves on a building out back here. I waited until October until it froze, and then went up with a hacksaw blade, cut that off the eaves, and then preserved that. And then more buckets and snowshoes and artifacts. The Texaco truck was mine as a kid also. My grandmother Towers acquired that truck from Fred Speed down to Plymouth, and it was a Christmas gift back in the 50s. And of course old Lehigh cement was something that my great-grandfather was doing, and as a result he acquired those nice porcelain signs.